And I said, nobody's ever going to believe this.
It's almost spooky, isn't it?
It is. It was. Hi, I'm Nick Polce of Gateway Properties, and you're watching The Open Gate. Hi, welcome back to The Open Gate. This is the 6th episode, 2nd season. I'm Nick Polce, and I want to welcome my guest here today. Is not only my friend and my brother-in-law, Alan Tucker. And Alan, welcome to The Open Gate. I've known Alan since, I think, 1981.
A few years.
Yep. Yeah. And we had a lot of experiences in hunting, fishing, and flying.
Mm-hmm.
And Alan is one heck of a pilot as well as a sportsman, and we're going to cover some of these issues here today. So I'd like to welcome Alan. Alan, welcome to The Open Gate.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, and looking forward to it. A lot of good memories.
Yes.
And some not so good. Weather-related incidences, but we'll talk about those later.
So Alan's made numerous trips to Montana. We'll start with that, with hunting. And how many years now?
Last fall was my 36th consecutive year hunting Montana. From eastern Montana as far west as the Wolf Creek area in Montana.
I hunted the same ranch with you, and I know I had some memorable experiences out there as well. I had a good learning experience with a Weatherby.
An upgrade.
Yes.
A little upgrade he needed.
Yep, the first year I went with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to highlight that and tell us about it?
Yeah, we made a stalk on some animals back in the backcountry. We had a guide with us. It was Nick, myself, and a guide, and we sat there watching a herd of, I can't remember, was there 6 or 7 bull elk come out at the bottom? And about 600 or 700 yards off they were at that point. And our guide said, you guys better get shooting because there's another hunter coming in the bottom, one of our party. You better get shooting. And I said, it's too far. He goes, no, you better get shooting. So we started shooting, and I shot, I think, once or twice, and Nick opened up, I think.
Oh, I said, get out of there. Let me have your gun.
Yeah. I think Nick shot 4 or 5 times with his 308. Yeah. And then I go, here. So I handed him the Weatherby, and I think the first shot, you dropped your bull. Yeah. So that was very interesting. And at that point, Nick decided he needed a little bit bigger gun.
Upgrade, yeah.
Upgrade, yeah.
Well, in the camp that year was Mac from the Eastman Journal.
Yeah, Mac Vosbeck.
What was his? He was
I believe, an editor, I think, or no, maybe sales. I think maybe it was sales for Eastman's Journal.
And he said if you gave him the pictures and wrote up a little, he'd publish it for us.
Yeah.
And then that was in 1997.
Yeah.
So I take in 2004, I go on a moose and grizzly hunt to the Yukon in British Columbia rather, and I was pinned up in a camp for several days, and getting bored because of the weather conditions I was flown into, and I was looking through this magazine pile, and I had no idea that our story had gotten published, but it got published, and I found one edition in there, and our pictures were in there.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was really it gave me goosebumps because it was fate. I mean,
yeah. Meant to be.
This was the only edition in that pile of magazines of the Eastman Journal.
Meant to be, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that night when the guides got back and I showed them that magazine, they couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that was a great hunt. That area. It's the Wolf Creek area. Has been really, really good. It was good to you. You killed.
Oh yeah.
You killed 3. I think you killed 3 bulls there, didn't you?
I got 2 bulls.
Two bulls
and well, I don't know how many mule deer. I think each time I got a mule deer.
Yeah. I started hunting eastern Montana. 1989 was my first year to eastern Montana, and I shot a mule deer, and I was hooked. I was hooked on the western. I come back home that fall, and I told my wife, I said, I got to get an elk. And then she goes, no, I don't know, an elk, that's a lot of money, and blah, blah, blah. But we had a mutual friend, Nick and I did, that he was able to set that up for me to do an elk hunt. And my first elk hunt was 92. '92, and I ended up killing my first elk in 1992.
And that was it. You were hooked.
I was hooked. Yeah, and I think 33. I've killed 33 bull elk, and I've got a few back home on the wall, a few mounted, and pile of antlers out in my shed. So
Well, the only thing I didn't like about the hunt out there.
the mountains,
Nope. I love the mountains.
the bears,
Nope. The horses.
the horse. Yeah, that's another experience. I almost forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Since we're on that subject, yeah. In fact, I think we were going to retrieve. Were we going for the hunt for that made the magazine, or were we going to retrieve the animals the next day? Is when we went back in there and you had an encounter with a horse.
And we were going on. That was no. That was the second.
That was
the
a different
second
trip.
hunt, different trip. And by that time, they had forest fire up there, burned
That's
off
right.
that one whole side of the mountain.
That's right.
So I could see right to the bottom on these little horse trails that were only maybe
Yep.
16 inches
Very
wide.
narrow and icy. It was cold and icy.
And I had a horse that was lame.
Yep.
And at one point, I couldn't take it anymore. I jumped off the horse. He was scaring the heck out of me. I jumped off the horse, pulled my gun out of the scabbard, and I remember the rancher's son laughing at me. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm walking back." And the horse took another step, and that was it. And he rolled down the side of the mountain.
That was terrible. That horse went, I don't know, 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
Probably. Over and over and over and over repetitively. And yeah, it was Rob's stepson.
He was screaming.
Justin was screaming. I never heard
Yeah.
anybody scream so bad in my life. And he was just beyond himself. And the horse made it to the bottom. And one of the guys walked all the way back around, and the horse was still alive. Very sore, but still alive.
I really thought it was dead down.
Yeah, I didn't think it would ever live. It was breaking trees off. I mean, dead trees, 6-8 inches through. It was smacking right off as it was going over it through the saddle. I'm just glad you grabbed your gun and pulled it out of the scabbard. That's right, because it was your new Weatherby. It was not
it was the
that
second,
year.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm glad you
Yeah.
grabbed. I said, grab your gun and get out of there. And man, it was icy. That contour trail. It's been an interesting trail over the years.
I'll never
Yeah.
forget. We were sitting there at the table that night. It was dark and it was after dinner, and the horse came walking back in.
Yep.
I never
Tough-
dreamed that horse
Tough
made it.
animals. Yeah, very tough.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good experience.
What a good experience.
Not for the horse, but it was for us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I think besides the hunting, I think the fishing there, fly-in fishing trips. I love the fly-in fishing trips up into Quebec. We had some great times. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
remember the summer that I called you? I said, we got to go back a second time.
Yep.
I couldn't get it out of my system.
We did that a few times. We did a couple trips a year up there.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
What, to Lake, what was the name of the Gabrielle? Was that the lake we went to that one time that we flew in, you and I got dropped off?
Horseshoe Lake.
Horseshoe, yeah. The lodge
But
was
then they picked us up over on that second lake.
second or third lake. We hiked.
Yeah, we hiked in, yeah.
We spent, 3 or 4 days
Yep.
going from lake to lake, you and I. Yeah, we thought we were going to run out of food.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? We didn't think we were going to have enough food, so we were down to like nitty gritty.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be picked up that day, and we didn't think we were going to make it because the weather was PU. But
Well, I remember flying out that morning.
yeah,
We came out of the motel and they had 60-mile-an-hour headwinds.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't know it, but the trees were bent over. I looked at you and I go, "Can we fly in this?" And he said, "Yeah, we'll be all right." I'm thinking, "Holy mackerels, I'm going to get sick." And I mean, I'm looking at Whitecaps rollers on those lakes, and he loaded us in a Cessna,
yep, I remember
a
that.
4-place Cessna.
182. Yeah,
Taxi down the end of the lake, and then he said he was talking French, and we didn't understand him. and he turned to us and said, "We go back." He said, "They're going to
go back. We go back.
Load everything into the Otter."
yep.
And the Otter, of course, is a lot bigger plane. And
Turbo Otter.
a
Yeah.
turbo, yeah. Oh my gosh!
Oh, that was quite a plane. Yeah.
I looked at you and I just smiled. I thought, I'm not going to get sick now.
No,
And that thing just shot me back in the seat when he took off. I couldn't
Powerful.
believe it.
that thing had a lot of power.
And they switched pilots. They put a bush pilot in there
Yeah, Michelle.
that guy was really in tune to fly in that kind of weather.
Michelle, yeah, he was. Remember, we thought when he came walking in there, we thought he was just like the handyman.
Yeah.
Remember, old dirty blue jeans. And,
Yep.
And we said, "Where's the pilot?" And he goes, "I'm the pilot."
I'll never forget. He said he let me sit next to him in the co-pilot seat. And he said that the Cessna would have capsized on the lake we were
yeah.
going into, and when we came into that lake, Horseshoe, he slid it in. Remember?
I remember very well.
That's
He was good. He was a good pilot.
First time I ever experienced that.
Yeah, he could actually reverse the prop on that, and he could actually back that plane up because the reverse prop on the turbo.
Unbelievable.
They ended up having to sell that plane up there. They had a lawsuit. They did plane tipped over, and a passenger drowned in the plane, and they had a major lawsuit.
Wow.
So they ended up selling that plane out of that outfitting business, and
That's too bad.
they since went out bellied up.
Yeah.
Another business took it over, which I think you've been with since, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that trip,
That
last night,
Yeah.
you took this picture,
Oh yeah.
and
I'll never forget that.
it was dead calm.
That was a beautiful night.
And I casted a surface lure out there.
Yeah, wood chopper.
And I turned to talk to you, and all he did was click the bail. I clicked the bail to reel it in, and then I ended up
Yeah, what a beauty.
netting. You netted it for me, but
Yeah.
the net wasn't big enough.
That fish was huge. What was it?
42 inches.
42 inches.
Yeah.
That thing was a
It
monster.
was.
You wanted to kill it. I said, no, don't kill it. Don't kill it. Remember?
I wanted to bring it home and
You want to
mount
bring it home? I said, no, let's let it go. Let's get a good picture of it. I'm glad we did because that was incredible fish. Yeah.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. Remember, that was a wood chopper.
Yeah.
The wood chopper lure. Yeah. I can't remember what year that would have. That had been in the early 80s.
I don't remember now. I don't remember.
I remember we did, because we did the trip, I think, that same season earlier. Mike, and your hired man, the four of us went up. There was four of us.
Oh, we
up.
went back then. That's the second. That's
Was
the
it
year
second?
we went
Was
back.
it the second? Yeah, I think it was. I don't know. They all kind of, that's a lot of years ago. They all kind of mix in together. One.
So, Alan, where did you grow up, and how did you get into hunting and fishing, and who inspired you to get into all this?
Dad was inspired me basically for all my activities. Hunting, I started out at a young age hunting in the Adirondack Park with Dad. As a young boy, I remember him toting me back in the mountains when I was 7, 8 years old. And never had much luck, but had a lot of fun, and we camped back in there and spent some time in the mountains. And as far as hunting home, we didn't have a lot of deer home in those earlier years. There was a few around, but
Right.
I was too young to have a license. But then he would always go southern tier and hunt, so I used to tag along in the southern tier with him down in the Finger Lakes.
Yeah.
And had a lot of memories down there with him. Good memories. And fishing, the same thing. Dad introduced me. They had the cottage up to Casog Lake up in Oswego County.
Yep.
Started fishing up there with Dad, and then he would tote me around different places. Never did anything really a long ways away. We didn't do any fishing trips, in Quebec or any place with Dad. The Finger Lakes was about as far as I went fishing with him, or lake trout. But Mom and Dad really, they coddled to us kids,
Right.
And
You grew up on a farm down there in Tabor.
Yep. It was a working dairy farm, and the cows were sold. And there was a few years the farm was leased out, and another farmer took it over and had some cattle on the farm for a few years. And then Dad decided he wanted to get back into the cattle, so he bought some cows. Right. He bought some pulled Herefords. Started with 3 heifers, and they're all carrying calves. And that spring, each of those cows had a calf, and they're all heifers. So the herd multiplied fairly quick. Got a bull, and next thing you know, we had, at one point, before I sold the cattle, I was up to 45 head of black
Holy
Angus.
mackerels.
I sold them 3 years ago this past March.
Do you miss it? Miss
No,
the cows?
I don't
No.
miss them. No.
Now you got more
A
freedom.
lot of work. It
to
was a
hunt
lot of
and
work.
fish.
Oh, yeah. I spent hours in that. I mean, and we still bale hay. My wife and I, Beth, thank goodness for her. We still put up just shy of 4,000 bales a year, just the two of us, square bales in the barn. Yeah. But the cattle was a lot of work, with the calving, the shots and everything goes along with it. And, I don't miss them. No. I thought at first I would. It was kind of hard the first day after I sold the cattle. I went down the barn, and the barn was empty. I looked in the barn, and there's no cows. That was kind of tough to swallow. But all in all, it's been good. Beth wanted me to sell those cows for many years. We were limited. We couldn't travel. I mean, we were stuck home.
Like having kids.
Yeah, and anytime I'd do a trip, whether it be Newfoundland or Canada or wherever it was, Beth really never got to go because somebody had to be home to babysit the cattle.
Yeah.
And many times they gave her problems when I was gone. So as far as the cattle, no, I'm glad that was just it was a phase that was phased out and moved on.
So
No.
you're all retired now? And-
Yep, this past September. 47 years in the heating industry. It was enough. I started in 1978 and 79, retired in September 2025.
Yep.
A lot of years. I started out fixing furnaces, driving truck, and tractor trailer, and
Yeah, you learned every facet of it.
I could, I run the operation, whatever
Yeah.
needed to be. And the last 10 years, my working career was with Superior Plus Energy out of Rome, and no complaints. It was good. But I had an
Yeah.
opportunity to retire in September, and I pulled the plug.
Yep.
So I'm glad that's
Yep.
another. Actually,
Well, you're a lot older than I am.
I think one day, one day in 5 hours. Yeah. So yeah, we have that in common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do.
But the birthdays roll around way too quick anymore.
Well, I know it does. It seems like, man, yep, it does roll around
Too
quick.
fast.
Yep.
Yeah. But like I say, we've had, my working career was good. I got to meet a lot of super people. In my business, I talk to people on a daily basis, and it really opened up the door. I mean, and it's funny how one door closes, another door opens up, and it certainly has.
Yeah.
I've been blessed to be able to do what I've done. I've been blessed to have a wife that allows me to do this. I remember that first year I went west, and I come back, and I told her, I said, I got to go back, and then the second year she let me go. The second year I said, I want to move there. I want to move to Montana.
I remember that.
And I made the mention to her, and she called my sister Karen, and Karen called my dad. The next thing I know, everybody was at the house, and everybody's like, "What are you going to do? You can't leave. You're going to leave here. You can't leave here." So they shame me into staying. But I go out for 2.5, 3 weeks every year to Montana.
Are you glad you stayed here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's home.
Now with the grandkids, I couldn't.
Yeah,
there's
no,
no way I
I
could
know.
leave now. No, I go out there. I got a great friend, Rob, out there. He's a really good friend, and it's been great to have
Yeah.
that relationship with him. And
Yep.
he comes back every summer, and we go up to Quebec fishing. Rob does, the owner of the business out in Montana. So we go back and forth, and now he's introduced me to a little bit of golfing.
Now you got to go out there and kick his butt this summer. on
Yeah, I
golf.
got to get. I got to. Yeah, I took a golf lesson the other day, and I've been practicing hitting balls quite a bit this past winter, and
Yep.
he's having a tournament in July out there. So I've got a ticket booked to fly out with my brother-in-law Clark, and
It wasn't long ago. I remember you saying you couldn't imagine yourself chasing a little ball around the course like
it was too demanding. Whacking that ball and then trying to get it in that little tiny hole that far. It's like, man, it's not me. But
Yeah.
I needed something more to kind of fill in that void when there's times I've got some, so I'm looking forward to it. My brother-in-law Clark, he actually got me some golf clubs and set me up with some clubs. So, and I've upgraded a few times with some better clubs. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Boy, I had a good time with you there the other night going to the golf.
That was
tournament.
fun.
Yeah, that
That's
was
fun.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna go down to Florida here in a few days and do a little golfing down there. So
Oh,
we'll see how that
yeah.
goes. Hopefully it warms up a little bit. But no, it's been great. My career is with Dad got me into the flying. He started me. I was 3 days old when my mother and father took me to Canastota Airport. I was 3 days old, and I was wrapped up in a little bundle, and Dad took his first flying lesson out of Canastota, New York.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy mackerels.
August, 1961. But more about that after this commercial break.
Hey, have you seen the listings on Gateway Properties lately?
No, why would I look at that?
Oh man, they got the best listings in the area. You gotta check them out. Hey, shut up. I'm trying to take a nap here.
Hey guys, can you keep it down in here? I'm trying to run a business.
Gateway Properties, the best listings in the North Country. Visit Gateway Properties of UpstateNY.com to see for yourself.
Yo, Mr. Moose, what's going on?
So, hey, we're back, and we're here with Alan Tucker, and he's going to tell us about his flying experiences and how he got started and who started you.
Who started? There again, Pops. He was a great role model. I was 3 days old. My mom bundled me up, and Mom and Dad took me to Canastota Airport, and Dad took his first flying lesson in August of 1961.
Wow.
And I think he had told me that he accumulated 6 or 7 hours, and he soloed. And he was a fast learner, Dad was. And it wasn't long after that he bought his first plane in 1946. Aranca Chief with a 65 horse in it.
Wow.
And he kept it at the farm in the pasture. And he built a T-hanger that was just an old wooden beam holding the roof up, and it was pretty crude, but it worked. But I had a lot of, stuff fly with him from the time I was little right up through. I'd always get in the seat there, passenger seat, and he always used to say I'd always fall asleep. He'd look over, I'd be laying against the door, sound asleep. I think the drone of the engine,
Yeah.
that Continental engine just purring away, used
Yeah.
to put me to sleep. But we, growing up with him and with that plane and making trips up to Lake Ontario, ice fishing. We go up to Schmo Bay, we go up on Stony Island.
Yeah.
There's a pond inside Stony Island up in Lake Ontario, up towards the Canadian border, and we'd land on that strip of ice in the wintertime, and we'd fish for perch and literally catch buckets full of jack perch.
I remember when I first started dating your sister. I
Catching
remember
perch.
you guys coming home. My God, you fill a bathtub full of
Yeah.
perch.
Yeah, oh yeah, it
from
was
that
incredible.
island.
It was incredible. Yeah, there's nothing to go up there, and all you needed was a bucket full of minnows and a little spool of fishing reel and a bobber, and you drilled the hole and you dropped it down, and bang, you'd catch them one right after another.
Gosh.
But yeah, that was back in the 70s, early 70s. I remember Dad a couple times even took me out of school. He wanted to go ice fishing, didn't want to go alone, so he'd come up and get me out of school and take me.
Oh, man.
We'd get in the plane, we'd fly out for the
Yep.
afternoon for fishing up there in the island. But then as you got older, I really, I was flying the plane, even though I couldn't reach the rudder pedals, but I really enjoyed the flying part of it. And
Yeah.
Dad kept saying, he said, well, you get big enough, you can, do this on your own. And I was 14 years old. We're on Oneida Lake, and we're ice fishing.
Yep.
And a cold day, but it was a nice day. It wasn't much wind. And I remember Dad looked at me and he goes, get in the plane, he says. I says, what? He says, get in the plane. You're going to take it around by yourself. And I was like, I go, skis, with skis on it. And I said, no, I'm not going to. He goes, get in the plane. You're ready. And I'll never forget it. I crawled in the passenger seat because I always flew from the right side. A pilot's supposed to fly from the left side. I got on the right side because I had flown so many hours from the right side. I felt more comfortable. So you're running the throttle with your left hand instead of the standard way with your right hand and the yoke here and the rudder pedals. So I got in there and he started it up, and I never forget it. I throttled up and I took off. And next thing I look over in the seat next to me, and no Dad. I was solo. I was all alone. And I really had that really weird feeling. It's like, well, now I got to land this thing. So I flew halfway down Oneida Lake towards Cleveland way from North Bay. And I'll never forget it. I landed because I didn't want anybody to see my first landing. I didn't want to botch it in front of my dad. So I landed down there, and it was perfect. And I took right back off and circled around, come in and landed by him.
God.
And I'll never forget it.
That's something. That's really something.
Yeah.
14 years old.
Got out and he shook my hand. Give me a hug.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
That's really something.
Miss that guy, yeah.
Yeah, I bet. So, for anyone that doesn't know how to operate a plane, tell us what are the foot rudders and the yoke.
The functions of
the functions.
the operating
yes.
functions,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's you got the yoke. In some cases, it's a stick for your controls. If your ailerons, left and right for your ailerons, which are in the wings, and then you got your elevator, which is up and down. You pull back to go up, and you push it forward to go down, right and left. Rudder pedals are on the floor, which you usually coordinate with your brakes if you're on wheels. Of course, wintertime, you don't have brakes with the skis, so you're on your own. But, so yeah, you got to kind of coordinate everything together. As a right turn, it's a little right rudder, a little back pressure, and you make your turn. So you got to kind of work everything together. But, of course, you throttle your speed. You got to keep it above stalling speed, to keep things moving the right way. But
How do you like landing on skis?
skis are great. Skis, I mean, it's hard to mess up a landing on skis.
It is,
It's smooth. Yeah, the only problem is on skis, sometimes you get your depth perception. If anybody's ever been out in a whiteout condition, like on a big lot, open lot on a snowmobile or walking, and you look and everything is pure white. If you come in to land on a lake or on a runway that's just freshly snow covered and no tracks, you don't have anything to focus on.
To orient
And
yourself.
yeah, it's very easy to misjudge your depth, your
Like
depth
a glassy
perception.
water landing.
Yeah, same thing with floats.
Yeah,
And as you
yeah.
know, you've done the float flying.
Yeah.
So you got to be really extremely careful, and you got to kind of feel your way down. You got to watch your airspeed to keep it above stall speed. You got to kind of feel your way down. But that's all stuff you learn in school and hard knocks. I've had some experiences where I've had some
Wind. I would imagine.
Yeah, I've had some bad experiences. I do a lot of flying I haven't so much the last couple of years because it's been a different winter, but for flying for up to Lake Ontario, for helping out on an island up there in Lake Ontario. I've had some bad experiences up there with wind, and I've been stuck up there. I can't get the plane home. I have to leave it up there and get my wife to come pick me up.
Oh, geez.
It was lake effect snow. But yeah, the principle of the plane is, to me, I got hooked, like I say, at a young age. I was brought up with it, so it was just part of the process. And I remember Dad saying, "Well, you got to get some lessons." So after that, I started taking lessons at Becks Grove Airport. Just a kid. I took ground school down there at Becks Grove, and I was young. I was 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, and I'll never forget it. But I was taking the lessons and took the ground school, and I was in high school, and I was bringing some of my friends home from high school, and I was taking them up on the plane without a license. And I'm flying around the countryside with some of my school friends, landing on a 1,200-foot strip, and Dad used to say, "How come the gas is low on the plane? What have you been doing?" He knew, but he never would say. But I can tell you some experiences that I've had, And then I got to the point where I got serious and went ahead and got my license to make it legal.
And what last time what are you up to? You've logged like 6,000 hours.
Just shy of 6,000 hours.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but I've been flying for 50 years.
Oh my God.
So you divide that out 50 years, and there's some years, I was flying a lot. I was flying. They did a project up there in Lake Ontario years ago where they had a wind project that they're possibly going to do windmills on an island, and they had the Audubon Society hired, and they had Met Towers out there from Hawaii. And all this, and I was taking people back and forth all the time. I was racking up a lot of hours. I was out there all winter, back and forth. So I racked up a ton of hours in a hurry.
Wow.
And ultralights. I flew ultralights. Ultralights were a big thing in the early '80s.
Right.
I built 34 ultralights kits from start to finish for the dealer. The people would buy them and didn't want to build them, and I'd build them, and I'd test fly them, and then the owner would take the plane away.
And then you built the 100-horse Kit Fox.
Yep.
That's quite a performer.
Yep, that picture is right in there. I think that one right there. There's a picture of the Kit Fox right there. Built that. My dad and I built that in 1994.
How long did it take you to build?
It was 2,000 hours, a little over 2,000 hours from start to finish.
Wow.
Yeah. Everything on that thing was manufactured in our garage, every single part of it. Yeah,
Isn't that something?
Yeah, the framework was welded together. We didn't have to do the framework, but everything else we had to do. So that was quite an interesting project.
That's the one you let me fly there.
Yeah.
I came to him and I said I wanted to learn how to fly, and I wanted to get into it more. And so then one night you said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "I want to go up to Pasico."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, go ahead, fly it." And I all the way to the Pasico airstrip, and then of course you took the controls when we were coming in.
Lake Falls, don't forget that.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm getting. So you did let me take it off that night, and we take off, and I said I'd like to go over to a place called Lake Falls, and I said, "You've ever seen it?" He said, "No, I've never seen it. Wherever you want to go, we got plenty of gas."
Yeah, you're flying, yeah.
Yeah. I said, okay. So we headed south from Pasico and swung over Panther Mountain, and I swung over Lake Falls, and I said it has a higher vertical drop than Niagara Falls, and you were amazed by it.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
And you turned to me and you said, "Swing around again. I'm going to open the door and take some pictures." I said, "Alan, what the hell? If you fall out," and you go, "Oh, you know the way back. Just follow the GPS." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So anyway, we swung around, but I was having a heck of a time. It just felt so heavy. The plane did, the control, and he says, "Does that feel heavy to you?" I go, "Yeah." Well, the flaps were on.
Yeah.
A couple notches, and the flaps.
Nick had flown. He had flown since we departed. You departed Pasico.
Yeah.
We flew for probably 15, 20 minutes with flaps on, which makes it extremely,
because it extends the wings.
It's really tough to feel the plane. It's heavy. The controls are heavy.
Yeah.
And I reached down. I took the flaps off. It's a manual lever. You click the flaps off. I took the flaps off. Nick goes, "Oh, thank you."
It felt like it had power steering. Then
he goes, "Now I can fly this thing."
Yeah.
But that's my fault. I should have paid more attention.
Yeah.
I was more interested in looking at everything because I usually, when I'm flying, I usually am focused. I'm not looking now, but I wasn't worried about it.
Yeah.
You're flying, but yeah, that was.
You did take a good video that night, though.
Yeah, we got a good video.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful area up there.
T-Lake, yeah.
That Pasico area is nice, anyways.
Yeah.
That's
It's a beautiful airstrip.
it's a beautiful strip. Yeah,
I love the museum in there, too.
yeah, they did a nice job there. Yeah,
They did a beautiful job, yeah.
Pasico, that area, we go up. You've been up there several times with us for the breakfast. In the end of August, they do a
Yep.
big flying breakfast up there. And last year, I think they did. What did they say they served? 900 and some odd breakfasts. I
Yeah.
think 960 breakfasts.
It's neat to
And I
see
think
all the different planes coming in
Yeah,
there, too.
76 or 77 different airplanes had flown in to Pasico for that event. We had gone up the night before, and we went to the campground. We stayed at the campground, left the plane there at the airport, and went back over the next day. Yeah, you always come up, you and Diane.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that area is beautiful up there. It's really nice. In the fall, it's, getting in early fall, which is a nice time of year up there.
I don't know if you know it. I went up with your father one day, and we were going to go ice fishing. He landed in a corn lot across from where we were living in Poland there.
Man.
And so we're going to go up to Pasico ice fishing for lake trout. And we landed on Pasico.
Oh, man.
Man, it was cold that day.
I remember you guys talking about how cold it was.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yep. So
Did you have
we didn't last long.
Did you have to get out and drag your feet?
No, not well. Yeah, that day I did. Yeah, well, we took off from Pasico and we were heading south back to Poland, and some friends of mine got a camp on a place just south of Noblesboro or just west of Noblesboro, and they were out there waving at us. And your father swung around and he said, "Well, we'll land there." And we landed, and the lake was nothing but a sheet of ice.
Glare ice, yeah.
And he turns to me and he says, "You got to get out and drag your feet." I said, "What?" He says, "You got to get out and drag your feet, hang on to the straw." And I did.
We did that one time, Dad and I, on the Sandy Pond at the Wigwam. We always landed there to get bait. And the wind was blowing, and it was glare ice, and we landed, and it kept sliding and sliding and sliding. And Dad goes, we're heading right toward shore. He goes, "Jump out and drag your feet." So I jumped out, and I've done it before anyways, and grabbed onto the strut and drag your feet on the ice to slow the plane down.
Yep.
Try to put in a side slide, a slip, and that'll slow it down too. It goes sideways. And I slipped and I fell and I went sideways and the tail kind of run up over me a little bit. It didn't run right over me, but it hit me. And there was a guy ice fishing there just next to us. And Dad shut the engine off and he goes, "You ran over your co-pilot," he said. I was a little guy. Yeah. Another good memory. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I'll never forget that day. Holy mackerel.
Oh yeah, we got stories after stories. I could bore you to death with stories on flying
That's
and
the way he looked at
experiences.
me, though, and he says, I don't have any brakes. You're going to have to get out
Yeah.
and drag your feet.
That's the only thing you have in the wintertime on a plane like that is a tail wheel. The tail wheel acts as your brake. If you can get in and if you apply pressure on that tail wheel, especially if you got snow on ice, that you can't, nothing for it to grab. But on glare ice, you just got to slide with it. But in snow, you horse it back, keep the stick right back or the yoke back or the stick back and sink that tail in. That's your brake. But I've had the caretaker from up there on Glue Island, Rick, he can tell you some stories. We used the runway on Glue Island is 4,000 feet long. It's a grass strip. And we used every bit of it one time in an ice storm. There was like 2 inches of ice up there. Everything was glare ice, and I couldn't stop the plane. I had it sideways and this way and that way. He's about ready to bail out because if you go right over the cliff, you're right in Lake Ontario. And he still talks about that. He goes, "Man, that was a scary one," he said. We've had times up there that we couldn't hardly get off the snow. We had to go back and forth with a machine to track it, tractor, and pack it down. The snow would be several feet deep, and the skis would just get buried in the snow.
I know your father landed up the Chameau one time when we were fishing up there, and he asked me to run the snowmobile up and down a few times so he could take off.
Tracks make a difference, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had some good experiences up there and some bad ones. I've been trapped up there. I got fogged in on there one time where I took the caretaker out because only 2-seat airplanes, so I only can take one passenger. So I took Rick out from Watertown Airport and dropped him off on Glue. I went back to get his fiancee, Roxanne, and the groceries. We're going to spend the weekend out on Glue Island. A lot of work we're going to do, cut firewood and stuff. And so I went back to get Roxanne at Watertown Airport, and as I'm flying back out over the lake, it's about 14 miles probably from the Sackett's out across, Kitty Corner out across there, maybe air miles.
Yeah.
Close to it. Maybe not that far air miles. It's a ways across open water, and it fogged in. We had lake fog, and I got zero visibility. And I am not an IFR rated pilot. I'm a VFR, visual flight rules. IFR is instrument flight rules. VFR is visual flight rules. And I'm not certified to fly with instruments. And it boxed in, and I couldn't tell if I was up, down, right, or left. Everything was pure white. It was like looking into just a snow globe.
Oh my God.
Fog. And I was over the island, and I remember turning and climbing and getting the reciprocal on the compass. That day I didn't have a GPS, which is stupid on my part, but headed back towards Henderson Harbor, and Roxanne was with me, and she kept saying, I kept yelling out the reciprocal, the compass reciprocal, 21212, to get back to the mainland. And I didn't know where I was when I kept dropping down, and next thing I know, I'm like 20 feet from ditching it in Lake Ontario.
Oh my God.
All I saw was water and great big icebergs, ice floating in the water. And I pulled back, and now at least had a reference to the water, knew where I was. And I said, if I keep flying, eventually I'm going to fly towards Henderson. But I knew there was those big high cliffs on Henderson, and if you fly into a cliff, it's all out, it's done. And next thing I know, I saw shadows, and I look, and it was land. And I said to Roxanne, it's Stony Island. She goes, no, it's not. It's Henderson. I said, no, it's Stony Island. And I could see the strip where Dad and I always ice fish for years as a kid. I could see the strip of ice, and I horsed it around. I chopped the throttle, and we landed right on that island, on the pond on the island, which is about a mile long. And scared to death. I was shaking. That's as close as I've ever come to meeting the maker.
Yeah,
and
that is scary.
So I pulled the plane over the side. I called Rick and told Rick he was on glue.
Yeah.
Of course, the only way to get there is an airplane. So he's stuck there, and I only got his fiance on with me on Stony Island, and we're stuck.
Yeah.
We had the food, so I called the caretaker, which I had his number for Stony, and I called him and on Stony Island, and I said, look, I'm stuck on your island. He said, well, up to the camp and started a fire. He said, and we have power. They run power all the way underwater, out from Henderson Harbor all the way to Stony Island.
Wow.
He said, turn the breaker on. You guys got power. So we have power. I got a wood fire going. I thought we were going to have to spend the night there in that island with Rick on the next island.
Oh, my God.
So I had the plane towed up on the shore, and I had sticks under the skis so it didn't freeze down because it was getting really cold. And it was like freezing fog. Everything was getting iced up, that lake fog. And just about dark, I looked out the camp window, and I could see a little glimmer of like skyline. And next thing you know, I could see over it. I could see Stony Island, or Glue Island. And I said to Roxanne, come on, quick. So we ran back out, shut the power off, headed back down, got in the plane and flew over and made it over. We got there just before it got dark. So
wow.
that was quite an experience.
That is.
That's as close as I've ever come to ditching it.
Wow.
That was scary.
That is scary.
Yep, very scary.
Oh, and you owe it all to this guy.
That guy right there.
Yep, your
Pops.
dad.
Great guy.
He
wicked
was-
role model.
He was a daredevil, too.
Oh, I call him. His middle name was Frederick, and I call him Fearless Fred because he was just,
Yeah.
I can tell you stories of flying out of Cooperstown one time for breakfast. It was fogged in down there. We made it to Cooperstown breakfast, and the fog rolled in, and there we sat. And he goes, we got to get home. I said, we're not going anyplace, Pops. He goes, oh, there's a little hole. See that little hole there? Let's fly up through that hole. He convinced me to do it, which me, again, never. But I remember flying through that little tiny hole and getting up on top of the scud and got home. But that's how you get in trouble. So as I get older, I'm not getting any bolder. I'm getting a little more cautious in my old age.
Yeah.
A few old and bold pilots,
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to hear some more stories here from Alan. Looking to list or buy property in the upstate New York region? Look no further than Gateway Properties. We're a small boutique agency with high integrity and over 39 years experience. Give us a call today or visit our website, gatewaypropertiesofupstateNY.com. So Alan's got these great photos here that we want to go through and discuss. This is a picture of him and his dad. They're building the ultralight, sort of like the Wright brothers, right?
Yep.
Powered by like a snowmobile engine, basically.
That was actually a Rotex 447. Yeah, that was my first ultralight that I bought myself. Dad had bought one prior to that. I think in 1980, he bought his first one, and we both enjoyed it so much that, we're both trying to fly it as a single seater. We couldn't go together, so we always would race home from work to get in the ultralight and go flying. So I finally said, I need my own. So Beth and I, we bought that. Thanks to her, she was working at Hardin Furniture Factory at the time, and she came up with some money, and we bought that plane. That was my first flight with that brand new plane. I think that was 1984.
You were building them. You were
Yeah.
custom building them
I knocked those things out. I built a ton of them. Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, I built a lot of them. The dealer, would sell the kit, and the people didn't want to build them. I got to the point where that was an MXL. That was a little fancier one that had double surface wing, where the standard Quicksilver Ultralight had a single surface. So this one took a little bit more time to build, but I got so that I could start on a Friday night in the evening with a brand new kit in a box. And by Sunday night, I could test fly that plane.
Oh my gosh.
I'd work straight through on that thing. I'd work right through it.
Oh.
But that was good money. I was making $600 building a kit. And $600 on a weekend back in the 80s was good money.
Yeah.
So I was knocking those things out quite frequently. A ball to fly. They're just really fun. You're right out in the open. You set right there. Here's another picture of this is my next, and I sold that plane. I wore that plane out after so many thousand hours.
Did you?
And I bought this one as another MXL. And that was up to Casog Lake, actually, flying over the water. I think Dad took that picture of me flying. He was on the diving board at camp, and I flew by. He took that picture as I was flying by.
Oh.
So I love the ultralights. Yeah, that was 2000. That was 2000. Yeah, a lot of fun.
He had one on pontoons.
Floats, yeah.
Or
Floats.
amphibious
Yep,
package,
yep.
right?
Still have that. It's actually it's all apart. It's upstairs in my garage. At some point in time, I need to rebuild it.
He let me idle that around Lake
Oh, did
Delta
he?
one day.
Yeah.
And because he wanted to water ski, and
You wanted it.
I wanted to have that thing up, but I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could land this, But I had it up on the step.
Did you? Had it moving, yeah.
Oh yeah.
A lot of fun.
And he really thought. He goes, I thought you were going to take off.
You
I
could've.
thought I was going to there for a minute.
This is so easy. It's like flying off skis.
Yeah.
Really easy to do. Yeah. The ultralights were great. It was, but then they kind of got phased out, and the people just kind of got out of the ultralight craze. And I built one for the B-52 pilot that was stationed at Griffiths Air Force Base. He wanted a two-seater, and it was a two-seat like that. Quite a bit more work involved, but it was a really nice plane. And he said, build it. I want you to fly it. He said, I'm going to be going to California on a few missions. He said, I get back from California, I'll pick up the plane. And so I did. I flew it, and I got contacted by the Rome Sentinel. They wanted to do an article on ultralights. So I took Tom Buchanan, his name was. He was a photographer for Rome Sentinel at the time.
Huh.
And I took him up in the two-seater, and Dad was flying his ultralight, and we flew all around the Blossville-Tabor area. He did a lot of pictures, and that made the front page on the Rome Daily Sentinel. I got that article home. But then I got to the point where, he came back. We did another photo shoot, and then he approached me. He said, look, I'm a skydiver. He said, I brought my parachute. Can I jump out of the plane? And I said, absolutely not. He said, look at. He said, I said, all it is two seats, and you're looking straight up. There's nothing underneath you but cables, to hold the three rudders. And he said, I think I can jump between those cables and go right straight down through where the floorboards would be. And I said, absolutely not. I said, all you have to do is hook onto that cable, and I'm adios. And he go, no. I said, you're not going to do it. He begged me to take him up and let him jump out of the plane because nobody had ever done it. He wanted to be the first to do it, but I refused to do it. So
Yeah, I don't blame you.
yeah, no.
I don't blame you.
No, Dad had his first one was 1980, and that had a Cuyuna engine on it, and a really poor engine, poor design, very unreliable. He actually had that engine quit on him, I think, twice, if not three times. One time it quit, and he landed Labor Day weekend on the beach in Sylvan Beach, right on the beach, and yelled to scare the people away that were playing volleyball, and landed on the sand, tore down the volleyball net when he landed. I get a call from the Sylvan Beach number. I just got in the house that night, and he goes, you got to come help me. Bring the truck. We got to bring the ultralight home. I said, what's the matter? He goes, well, I just set it down on the beach in Sylvan Beach. I need to get home. So we had to go down, take it apart, carry it up through people's yard, get it on the truck, and take it home. Well, I could go on forever.
You still have an ultralight that you fly, don't you?
Yeah, I sold one last. I'm down to 5. Well, I'm down to 4 airplanes now. I had 5 last fall or last summer. I sold one, went to New Jersey, and I still got the Aranca, the Kit Fox, which are conventional airplanes, and then I got the T-Bird ultralight, and then I got Dad's Quicksilver, which is unassembled at the present time.
Is that the one with pontoons?
Yeah, that's upstairs. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. This picture here is that's a day after Beth and I got married. That was she wasn't pleased. You can't really probably see her, but Dad and I are there putting the ailerons back on the plane. We completely rebuilt it, refabricated it, and went straight through it. Beth sitting on the four-wheeler on the other side of the plane. But that's how we spent our honeymoon, putting the airplane back together.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. Good memories there, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
He loved that plane. He put a lot of hours on that plane.
He did, didn't he?
Yep. I got skis on it right now. It's ready to go. So
Did you have you had it up this winter on skis
No,
yet?
the weather hasn't allowed. I haven't had time. Maybe Thursday, possibly, weather permitting. Got to go to the island.
This kind of fluff, can you?
Yeah, it'd be tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough flying, but
I
yeah.
know it.
But no, it's good times. Good times. A lot of fun.
So then you have a picture of an elk right
Yep,
there?
that was my first elk. That was 1992, Wolf Creek, Montana.
Yep.
Yep, that was my very first elk, and that was what started it all off. And like I say, I've killed over 30 bulls, and been very, very blessed. But this is my biggest. That was my biggest bull. That was 348 and 7/8. That almost made
Wow.
350. They classify the inches. They measure the length to score it. That bull almost made 350.
Did you have to go quite a ways in to pack it out, or?
Yeah, it was a tough pack. Rob and a couple of helpers got guides. Mac Bosbeck was one of them. We got it out the next day. But it was in the evening when I shot it. A story that I was sneaking up on another herd of elk, and that elk was actually bedded and sleeping. I shot him in his bed at about 30 yards. So
Oh, wow.
It was really close.
Yep.
But yeah, since then, like I say, we've been to Newfoundland, shot moose in Newfoundland, killed quite a few moose up there. You've been up to Newfoundland. We've had
Yeah.
got to get back up there with Nick, and
I absolutely love the moose meat. It's
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 great.
really great meat.
it is good. Yeah.
I mean, I've had elk, I've had caribou and moose, and by far moose is
Moose
the
is
best.
good. Yeah, I
Yep.
love it. Yeah, can't go wrong with the
Yeah.
moose. Yeah.
No, you can't.
Yeah, that's basically since we got rid of the cows, we,
Yeah.
live off the
There's no
moose.
gamey flavor
No.
to it.
Now, if I get a moose every other year, that's a lot of meat.
Yeah.
That carries us
Absolutely.
through. Carries us through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I shot a good one last fall. I shot one in Newfoundland that was 50-inch spread, by far my biggest moose. That was a big bull.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big,
Yep.
big bull. So
Yep.
yeah, I could bore you to death with hunting stories and fishing stories.
I like hunting in Newfoundland. I don't like those Argo rides.
No,
The terrain is, I've never seen terrain, never hunted terrain
no.
that unbelievable.
Difficult.
Because there's rock crevices that can drop down 6-8 feet. And there are
Difficult, yeah.
bushes growing over and you can't see that stuff.
No.
And these guys just take right off across that stuff with those
it's-
Argos.
Yeah, they're good guides. Last year I was with Daryl, and he had a Can-Am, a six-wheeler,
Yeah.
like an ATV six-wheeler, extended thing with a box in the back, with a two-up seat, and it rode like a Cadillac. That had it all over the Argos. The Argos are
No
rougher.
kidding.
Oh, I was like, you could ride there, very comfortable. Yeah.
Boy, last year when I went up, there was 4 of us in that Argo.
Oh, that's tough. Yeah.
And he pulled up to the lake. What are we doing? We're going across. We're going across.
Yeah. It's
Just
scary.
don't move. Don't move.
Don't wiggle.
Don't wiggle.
Yeah, don't take on water.
Holy man.
Those guys know what they're doing, though.
Yeah, they do.
Darren, yeah, Chris, those guys are good guys. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And I had some really good outfitters. Outfitter is a great guy. Cecil and his crew. He's got a great team. Up
You know,
there.
you can have a poor hunting trip, but man, if the food is good,
Oh yeah,
and we had great accommodations up
Yep.
there.
yeah. A lot of good times up there. Newfoundland, like you say, the walking. That's a tough part.
Holy man.
That takes it out of you.
You can't see. You can't
No.
see what you're stepping into. a
No,
lot
and
of
you don't want to
times.
step in a hole that's if it's got a wet spot and there's a lily pad growing in it. Don't step in it because you're going
Yeah.
right up to your neck. I've learned that the hard way. The first trip up there.
I've never
But,
seen terrain like that. Even when I hunted in British Columbia and Yukon, it was like
completely different.
it was. Northern Quebec was by far the easiest.
Yeah.
I mean, I could hunt up there with sneakers on,
The ground was that hard rock.
gravel, and it was in mountain ranges, but nothing like Newfoundland.
No. In the last 2 years, the Newfoundland has been tough because they haven't had the moisture up there, so it's been
Yeah.
dry. So it was, the first year, 2 years ago going up, I could have hunted with sneakers, like you say.
Yeah.
Last year it was a little wetter, but the year, when you and I went up that one trip, remember it rained the whole time
Oh my gosh.
and fog. That was 3 years ago now, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was a tough hunt. That was bad.
That was tough.
The weather was poor. Not to mention the ship ride across that night was a little rocky.
I didn't remember that. I slept right through
I
it.
can't believe you slept through it.
Yeah, I did.
That big old ship was rocking. In fact, it was tipping me side to side in the bed. It was clunk one side, clunk the
Yeah.
other. I thought sure it was going to wake you up. You were snoring.
That is an experience all of its own. Even if you're not going up there to
Oh,
hunt,
yeah.
anybody who wants to go to Newfoundland should experience that. Putting your vehicle at Port of Sydney there,
Yeah.
loading it onto this big ferry, and this ferry is like a cruise ship. That's a ferry.
600 cars and 60 tractor trailers, I think they put on that thing.
I've never seen anything like that in my life. And then 7 hours to get across to Port of Basque in
Yeah.
Newfoundland, and you wake up the next morning and you're there in the port.
Yeah. Half the fun is getting there. That's what I say.
It is.
Yeah.
It's an experience all of its own getting there. I mean,
Looking forward to having Diane go up there and see that because it's people that have done it the first time. It's like, wow, it's huge. You drive your vehicle on the ship. It's like 3 layers, 3 levels. And
restaurants and
Yeah.
you got a hotel room
Gift
on
shop,
it.
yeah.
And your vehicle's parked down below on the lower decks, and it's unbelievable.
can't go wrong. Yeah.
I don't know how that thing floats.
It's amazing displacement, what it can do, isn't it? Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
I didn't feel any wave action on it though.
We hit it one year coming across there. Beth was with us, and we hit that one night coming back, and it was bad. And it was to the point where the bathroom doors, it was 2:00 in the morning, and I couldn't sleep, and the doors were banging and banging, and the captain or second mate, wherever he was, I met him in the hallway, and he said there was 56-foot swells. Not waves, but swells, so it's kind of like rolling
yeah.
up. And it was so to the point that this ship is huge. The props were coming out of the water and cavitating. So the whole ship, when it come out of the water, go brrrr. You'd feel the props cavitating. They're missing water. And he said, "This is as rough as it ever gets." He said, "Yeah."
Well, you think about it, it's the North Atlantic, and it is the Titanic went down.
The Titanic went down. Yeah, in fact, that's where they brought in some of the. Sad to say, they brought in some of the bodies to that shoreline.
St. John's.
Yeah. What do they call that? Race Point or some point up there that they
Yeah.
brought him. Yeah, a lot of history. We're going back up in September just to sightsee. We're not hunting this fall, but we're going back up just to sightsee and go up to Grossmore National Park. We spent some time there
Beautiful up there.
2 years ago. That was beautiful. Cowhead all the way up through there. I want to go a little further up towards Labrador this coming September.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, camping up there. So
This has been such an interesting episode that our producer would like to step in and ask Alan some questions, and we're going to do that right after this commercial break.
Hey, have you seen the listings on Gateway Properties lately?
No, why would I look at that?
Oh man, they got the best listings in the area. You gotta check them out. Hey, shut up. I'm trying to take a nap here.
Hey guys, can you keep it down in here? I'm trying to run a business.
Gateway Properties, the best listings in the North Country. Visit Gateway Properties of UpstateNY.com to see for yourself.
Yo, Mr. Moose, what's going on?
All right, cool. So I'm going to start over.
You ready?
you're right.
All right, I'm ready.
Good
All
job.
right, so we're back. Open Gate, episode 6. Alan, I'm Zach.
Zach, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. Thanks for coming on.
No, thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. I've been sitting behind the camera for the last little bit,
Sure.
taking a couple little notes and questions that I want to ask you because you've got some very interesting and kind of scary stories.
A few. Yeah.
So the first question I want to dig into is, are you a bush pilot? Do you consider yourself a bush pilot?
I would say probably, yeah. I mean, as bush can be for this area.
Yeah.
Flying off wheels with a tail dragger out of a farm field. Yeah, it probably considers that. But I would always like to think that I could go the next step. And I always thought maybe go to Alaska and, for a few weeks in the summer to fly.
Yeah.
Some of that bush remote country. Probably never happened at this stage in my life. But I guess I would be considered a Eastern bush pilot, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I have a VHS tape about an Adirondack bush pilot.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question is, like, in the flying community, in like the small engine flying community, are you only a bush pilot if you're in Alaska?
I don't
Is there
think
like a
so.
size criteria?
No, I don't think so. I think
Cool.
anybody that has, can fly off from a field with wheels on a tail dragger
I see.
may be considered
So
somewhat of a bush pilot.
If they're leaving and landing without a traditional
Correct, runway.
Cool.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Thanks
In
for
my
clearing that
area,
up.
in my area where we fly out of, I'm not required to have any communication with any tower.
Okay.
It's a Class G airspace. Class G is I is going through ground school many years ago. G is go for it. Means it's an open area. I'm not required to talk to any towers.
Oh, wow.
But if I was to fly in a restricted area, around Syracuse or in their airspace, then I have to be on the radio.
Yeah,
Which
got
I
it.
can do. I don't like it. That's why I tend to avoid all those areas.
Totally, yeah.
And the MOAs, military training facilities around Watertown, I stay out of their area.
Yep.
I just don't like the hassle with radio work.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yes.
That's just one question though. We got many more here. What's a jackalope?
Jackalope, right there. You can't see it on the camera, but yeah. It's a fictitious rabbit with antlers.
But is it fictitious?
Yeah, it's not a real thing,
Okay.
but it looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had some fun with people over the years. I showed them pictures of those things. They're like, wow, man, I'd like to get one of those,
Yeah.
And I think, did you buy that in Montana?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I've had people come in this office and say,
What
is
is-
that real?
So they're novelty.
It's a
yeah.
buck. It's a buck rabbit. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Where you walk in the bushes.
Yeah. You never know what you're going to step on. Yeah.
Cool. When you were talking about your childhood and how your dad had a plane, but you also grew up on a farm. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the storage of this plane. You kept it just like in your barn? That was like your hangar?
Down the road, we had a little field that was suitable for an airstrip. It was pretty rolly, pretty rough.
Okay.
About 1,200 feet. Electric wires on one end and a fence on the other end. So we're really limited to what we could do.
Yeah.
And we didn't own on the end, the eastern end, we didn't own that extension. There was a little field there. We didn't own it at that time. But later years, my dad was able to purchase that from the neighbor. So we were able to extend the runway and cut the trees down. So it gave us a much better approach getting in and out. But it's just a small little field. I keep it mowed. I mow it every week with a riding lawnmower and keep it groomed so it's nice.
So do you think that made you a better takeoff?
Yeah, because I learned to fly, like I say, off the skis originally,
Yeah.
that winter, but then I jumped right onto wheels in that spring, and I was flying out of a 1,200-foot strip with wires on one end, barbed wire on one end, and electric wires on the other.
Wow.
So it really made you aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
And I think it made me a better pilot for that, learning the speeds to keep the plane above a stall speed. I'm talking stall, not engine stall, but the airfoil stalls. If the wing loses lift, if you don't have enough forward movement in the wing, the plane actually will stall and it'll spin and crash.
Oh, wow.
So you have to learn to keep that above a stall, and that's what gets a lot of pilots in trouble. They come in too slow. You gotta kind of baby it. You gotta feel it, and I've done it enough. I can feel it. I feel it right in my butt when I'm flying. I know how the airplane feels, and if I need a little more throttle, and then all changes it's relative to your winds. You never really want to land with a tailwind, but in some cases you may have to, certain places. But wind is irrelevant.
Tailwind is pushing you.
Yeah, pushing you forward, faster speed, and cover more ground speed. What you mean, your landing speed is much faster as if you're into the wind. If you're into the wind, or the Aranca, it's a 1947 Aranca Super Chief. That's got a little bigger engine. That has no flaps. It has wing ailerons, but no flaps. Whereas the Kit Fox has flaps. And as Nick we talked about earlier, with the flaps, you can actually put the flaps down to slow the airplane down to create more lift, but you
Okay.
can land at a slower speed
Okay, so you want to land
into the wind if you can.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Very
but there's times you have a quartering wind or a crosswind, and that can blow you sideways. So there's
Yep.
a lot of variables.
That's cool.
But experience, pilots just after a while pick up on it.
So did they purposely put landing strips in places where the wind, because we kind of know the wind direction, especially here.
You try an east-west runway is your best runway.
Yeah.
A north-south usually isn't too good, so you tend to want to have an east-west runway.
Because then you get
if can.
side winds.
Yeah, you get
Yeah.
the crosswinds.
Cool.
But our field home is we got a hedgerow of big trees on one side and an open field on the other. So there's times that I come in and I'm coming in at like a 45 degree if the wind's blowing you sideways, and
Yeah.
just before you hit the ground, you want to straighten it up.
Oh, I see.
So you got to kind of just
Huh.
kind of manipulate
You
it.
anticipate it, yeah.
You just got to fly it to the ground. That's one thing you learn in school, flight school. You just fly the plane right to the ground. Don't ever give up on flying it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I got a lot of questions. Okay, so that one's a little serious. Let's go into the less serious one.
Serious? I like serious.
Have you ever seen the movie The Edge?
The Edge, oh, yes, certainly.
Woo!
Oh, yes.
You guys
Certainly.
love that movie. All right, cool.
Yep, The Edge, certainly
I
have.
love it too.
Yep. That's
How
a
true to
cliffhanger.
life is that?
Nah, it's all.
Did you see it before you were a pilot?
No.
No, 'cause that came out in
that
90, like,
came out,
3.
yeah. No, it's a lot of.
Great movie though.
It's a great,
bear
well,
movie.
good
great
filming.
bush pilot.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If you haven't seen The Edge,
Yeah. Yep,
go check it
that's-
out. We
that's
don't get commission on it, but go see it.
Go see it, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good movie. Yeah, I've watched it several times.
Beautiful. What about? Have you seen American Made with Tom Cruise from like 2017, where
Oh.
he's a pilot that smuggles coke to
Oh,
South
yes.
America?
Yes, I have seen that.
So when you told me the story about the short
Taken
takeoff,
off. Yeah, they tried to overload him with
Yeah.
the coke. Yeah.
cool
Yeah.
scene.
Oh yeah, that's a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. I expected it to suck because it's made after 2015. I kind of have this cut off.
Yeah.
Anything made after 2015.
So yeah.
not
No,
good.
it was a good movie. Yeah,
really
I watched it a
was.
couple times too. Yeah.
Cool.
But that's you talk about that weight and balance. Weight and balance is crucial on especially a smaller plane.
Yeah.
Nick and Diane and my youngest daughter and her husband Tom and Beth and myself, we did a flight in Hawaii last March. We went down and we chartered a plane on island of Kauai.
Okay.
Kauai? Kauai, correct? Kauai.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we chartered this plane. He took us up and we flew around the island. It was the most incredible flight I ever have done. It was breathtaking.
So chartering is renting.
Yeah,
you fly
Yeah,
yourself.
I think it cost us, I don't know, was it $600 for us for like an hour and 15-minute flight for all of us? You know, it was cheap. I thought it was cheap. But weight and balance, he balanced the plane according to our weight. In other words, he put people here in this seat in the back and this person here on this side.
Yeah.
So on a small plane, even though that wasn't a small plane like mine, it's still very crucial on your baggage.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so you got to space it out and that makes a difference for your performance. Your takeoff and landing performance all changes too. The more weight, the less performance.
Yeah. Footing or whatever. Your tread.
Yes.
So from what I understand, and just clear this up. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. You have a bush plane has 3 different, I think, skis. Mm-hmm. Water skis.
Floats, pontoons, yeah.
And those huge balloon tires.
Balloon tires, yes.
Am I missing something, or those
No,
are it?
That's it.
Cool.
That's all you got.
And balloon tires are meant for sand.
Soft terrain, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I kind of wish I had those at times because our field gets in the spring gets really soft and muddy.
Yeah.
And those bigger tires, bigger surface, you can land in a little bit wetter ground.
Why are they bald?
No need for traction.
Okay.
No, but those Alaskan bush tires, those big bush tires on those planes,
Do they have grip?
no grip. They're
No.
all bare.
Huh.
But they're wicked expensive. I think the last I heard, like $2,700 a tire
Wow.
for one of those tires.
Why?
I think because it says aircraft on them,
Oh, yeah.
and it says Alaska on the side of it. I think
That
you're gonna,
sounds right.
You know, I think they're just going to get you because anything to do that's not so much experimental. Because see, the Aranca, that 1947 Aranca is a certified aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
That was built by a manufacturer. Where the Kit Fox that my dad and I built in 1994 is considered experimental. That's a whole different class of aircraft. So I can alter and change anything I want to do on that Kit Fox myself. I don't have to have a certified altimeter. I don't have to have a certified compass. I can get, off brand name parts. Whereas the Aranca, you have to have everything certified
I see.
by the FAA.
It's like having a
It's got to be
Mercedes.
signed off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that said, the Kit Fox, you can alter it and do the things you want to do with it yourself. And I went to Albany after I built the Kit Fox. I went to Albany and I met with an inspector down there, and I showed him the manual of the Kit Fox from start to finish. We had to have it inspected when we built it. The guy came right to our field and inspected the plane.
Yep.
And he only found a couple little things. There was one nut he didn't like. It wasn't on far enough on a stop nut. He wanted a little more thread sticking through. Very minimal things. But with that said, I went to Albany and I got certified as a self-inspector. So I can do my own inspections legally
Nice.
on that Kit Fox.
How
So I
about
don't-
you do car inspections?
No.
No. Meetups. Tell me about those. I've
Notems?
shot some videos with, and I've talked to Jeff Irwin a lot, as we were talking about before we started filming this, and he talks about the meetups and how wild they are. You mentioned the one at Pasico, But I guess I'm just curious. Do you go to the one in Montana? Do you go to like an Alaska one?
What are you saying now? What?
Meetups. So
The fly-ins.
Yeah, where
meetups. Yeah,
groups
excuse me.
of people that
Yeah.
also own bush planes that meet up together.
There's groups, yeah. I belong to the Experimental Aircraft Association, EAA, and I belong to the local chapter down here to Frankfurt, the Highland
wow.
Frankfurt Airport. So there's a group of us that we are like an organization,
Yeah.
and we help each other if need be. And what's nice about that, when you're building an experimental plane, certain tools you need for building,
Yep.
the organization has that, so you can share those tools within the group. But yeah, for breakfasts, I love breakfast. Yeah, I try to hit 4 or 5 a summer. I like weed sport. I can leave on a Sunday morning. Every other Sunday in the summer, weed sport out near the Finger Lakes has a breakfast. I can buzz out there in the morning, have breakfast, fly back home, and still make church by 9:30 in the morning.
Breakfast with the other
Yeah, all
pilots?
the pilots.
Oh, I see. Nice.
Oh, there'll be 50, 60 planes fly in there.
Oh, really?
So we all sat there and I think I took Nick. Did I take you to weed sport?
No,
Not weed sport? No, I got to get you weed sport. Weed sport's a good one.
Huh.
But it's nice to get together with the pilots and, swap stories and experiments, different
That is
things.
cool.
Yeah.
When a plane engine dies, how long do you have to make a safe landing?
Depends, of course, on your elevation and the glide ratio of the plane. The Ranka, I think, has about an 8-to-1 ratio. So every 8 feet you go ahead, it drops 1.
So that's how you factor it in.
Yeah, and it all depends on your elevation. Of course, that can change. Where the Kit Fox is a very small, narrow wing, I think that's like a 5-to-1 ratio. That comes down a little quicker. It's a little faster.
Yep.
I mean, the Kit Fox cruises about 120 miles an hour when you're at cruise speed.
Yep.
Where the Ranka is about 110, but the Ranka's got a much bigger wing, thicker wing, so it's a little bit slower, but also has better lift.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I've only been up in a Super Cub 3 times in my
Yep.
life. You are talking about, you mentioned 2 styles today, ultralight
Yep.
and the Kit Fox, which I'm presuming the Kit Fox is smaller
The Kit
than a Super Cub.
The Kit Fox, actually, this Kit Fox is bigger.
Bigger?
Well, it's not a bigger physically, but cabin size is bigger.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's wider than a Beechcraft Bonanza. And the Kit Fox is side-by-side seating where the Super Cub is tandem. One sets behind the other.
Oh, true.
Where the Kit Fox and the Ranka, you set side-by-side. You're not one ahead of the other.
Oh,
And
good point.
they both have their dues, goods and bads. I mean, I've got some stick time and not a Super Cub. Well, I do. I flew a Super Cub in Montana a couple times. A good friend of mine out there's got one. But for me, I like to have your passenger right there. It's easier to communicate and talk with, even though you got the headsets. You can communicate back and forth. But
Totally. And
Yeah.
then if something happens, the
Yeah.
person driving doesn't have a seat and a
See,
body. in
yeah.
front of them that they have to
They can
see over.
They can see what's going on.
Yeah, totally.
Be the first one on the scene.
Yeah.
But no, I like the both. The Kit Fox has a stick yoke here, which is very comfortable to fly. I mean, it's got reclined seat. You lay right back, and it's very comfortable. I mean, I've flown. A buddy of mine bought a plane in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, a few years ago. He didn't have a tailwheel endorsement on his license, so he couldn't legally fly at home. So we flew out to Milwaukee and went up to Oshkosh. They picked us up, and we went up there to Oshkosh. And he ended up buying the plane, and I flew it all the way back home from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And it was a Kit Fox, but it was a Kit Fox Speedster, a little bit smaller wing. It was a 912 85 horse engine, where ours got the 100 horse in it, a little different engine. But that's kind of another story. He actually took me out on a road trip a few weeks prior to him buying that plane in Oshkosh. We drove all the way from home out to Minneapolis, St. Paul to look at a plane that was on listed, and he was going to buy it. We drove all the way out there. We spent the night and drove out the next day and looked at this plane, and it was junk. The pictures that he sent him were not what the plane looked like. It was junk. We made about 5 minutes looking at it, and I told John that was going to buy it, so let's go home. So we had a fool's trip all the way to Minneapolis, St. Paul. A week and a half later, he calls me up. He goes, "Oh, I found another one." I said, "I'm not going, John. I'm not going out to." He goes, "Well, this one is in Oshkosh." He goes, "And it looks really nice. I've been talking to the guy." He goes, "Let's do this. We'll fly out on a commercial flight out of Syracuse. We'll fly out to Milwaukee. He's going to pick us up in Milwaukee and take us up to the airport.
He's covering your flight.
Yeah, he's going to
Cool.
pay for everything. He
Great.
says, "I'll pay for everything." I said, "All
Great.
right." He convinced me to do it.
Yeah.
So we did. Went out. Long story short, he bought the plane, and it was March 7th, and it was cold, and it was windy. And I went up with the instructor because he didn't have a tailwheel endorsement. It was a controlled airstrip. We had to talk on the radio. I went
Also,
up.
you had to test
I tested the
I
plane because he
see.
didn't have an endorsement.
Got
He
it.
was wanting, my call.
Yeah,
that it was
yeah.
okay to fly the plane or not
That's-
if he was worthy.
That's worth the money for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So I flew the plane around the pattern a couple times, come in and landed. It was a nice plane, and it had a little squirrely. The tail wheel was a little squirrely on it, but so he goes, all right. He said, the wings fold up on it. He said, let's rent a U-Haul. We'll fold up the wings. We'll put it on the truck. We'll head for home the next day. And I said, better yet. I looked at my watch, and it was like 2:00 in the afternoon. I said, March, it doesn't get dark now till about 6:30, 6:45. I said, let's fuel this thing up and fly it home. He goes, no, we're not going to fly this thing home. And I said, yeah, we are. I'm not turning it apart. When this plane is flyable, we're going to fill it up.
True.
So I called flight service. He come out with a truck, filled up the tanks, 2 wing tanks. And we only had a little baggage, just like an overnight bag, just a small little bag.
Because you flew in.
Yeah, we flew in commercial. We didn't need much because we didn't, change of underwear,
Yep.
So he went and he started stuffing stuff back in. Well, the fuel line come down out of the wing tank and come down through to a header tank behind the seat. And when he did, he broke the fitting that come out of the tank. And unbeknown to me, I'm monkeying around with something else outside. And all of a sudden I smelled aviation gas. And I looked inside the cockpit and his gas is pouring out of the wing tank and soaked the seats. It had nice cushion seats. They were soaked with avgas.
Just bought it.
Just bought it. So I pulled my finger over the hole, and I said, go get flight service, call somebody, see if they got a mechanic on staff here. So I'm holding my finger over the hole. He goes back and gets the guy, and he kind of comes back, and he had fuel line, luckily, and fixed it and put on the fuel line. But now it's another hour late, and I said, oh, boy, I don't know about leaving now.
Yeah.
Unfamiliar plane, and that's the last thing I want to do is fly across one of the Great Lakes. I said, no, we got to go down around Chicago and all the way back across Illinois and that way. And he goes, I don't think we got to fly it. I said, yep, we're going to go. So meantime, we had the seats laying out there in the sun, and the sun was shining. It kind of baked off some of the gas smell.
Yeah.
So I took off, and we headed for home, and we made it to Bryan, Ohio. And I did have a GPS. Luckily, I had a little handheld GPS.
You got good vision. He just saw what I wrote on this paper from over there. That's pretty good.
So I had a little GPS, which was battery operated, but the batteries weren't super strong, so I could only use it once in a while. Okay. But with that said, I found an airport up ahead. I said, well, here's an airport, Bryan, Ohio. So we landed, taxied up. I said to the guy, can you fill it up with gas? Yep. And I said, is there a place we can tie it down and leave it for the night? And is there a way we can get a ride to town? It was like 2 miles from the airport to town. He goes, there's keys over the visor. Take that car. When you're done with it, just make sure you have enough gas in it that you use the gas. And there's a nice restaurant up in town. So we went and spent the night. The next morning, I got up at like 3 o'clock, and I'm looking at my phone, looking at the radar, and it's like, man, there's a storm knocking. There's a big storm coming across. And I woke up John. We had a room together. I said, John, the owner, he bought it. And I said, we got to go now. He goes, we can't go now. I said, no, we got to go now. He goes, why? I said, we got a storm coming. We got to get to the airport. So we quick headed to the airport, and we get on the airport computer right there at the FBO. And they had a nice computer, and it was like right on our doorstep. I mean, this line of squalls coming, it was going to be bad for 2 days.
So you had to beat it.
It's 5 o'clock in the morning now, 5:30 in the morning. And he goes, what are we going to do? I said, get in the plane. We're going.
It's
he goes,
now or next
this plane
week.
doesn't have any lights on it. He goes, there's no lights in this plane. I said, we don't need them. We're going. So the mic, you can click the mic. You go, I think it was 122.80. You click, 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 3 clicks, and it turns the runway lights on your radio. You can turn the lights on the runway to light it up.
What?
So yeah, you remotely do it.
No way.
Yeah, so I click, 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 and all of a sudden, all the lights come on the runway.
So cool.
Everything's lit. And I said, get in the plane. And I'll never forget it. I got to the end of the runway, and I fired that thing up and took off in the dark and headed east, headed for home.
With no lights.
With no lights. I was using my phone to look at the instruments,
Wait, this was when?
March, it would have been March 8th. We landed.
This past year.
Oh, this is a few years back.
Oh, okay.
This is a few,
well, you said phone, so I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I had a little
pretty modern.
I had a little flip phone. Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I had a little flip phone, and it'd light up and up. I could see the instruments.
I see.
And we took off, and I'll never forget it. I kept looking to the east, and pretty quick I see a little glow in the distance of the sun coming up in the east. And the storm was knocking on our door.
Okay, so you were banking on the sun.
Oh, yeah. I want to get out of there, man. And we beat feet, and we made it to Bryan, Ohio. No, we made it to Meadville, Pennsylvania. We landed, topped off the gas tank, and I flew it the rest of the way home to Rome, where his trip was here in Rome.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, I could bore you with
Crazy.
stories. I could go on forever with
No,
stories.
you're not boring me, but that brings me to another question. So, the reason I wrote GPS was not, well, whatever. You said you began flying in 1980. Like, you began flying in 80. What year?
Oh, legally flying?
Yeah.
Well, I become a professional student pilot in '84.
Okay, 84. So we'll say 84.
Yeah.
So how has the not introduction, but like the development of GPS?
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. I put a new Garmin Air Map 660, which is now kind of old school. It's 3 years old now, or 4 years old.
Yeah.
I put a panel mount in the kit fox that pops right in, and it's incredible. I got satellite weather on it. I got ADSB. I don't have ADSB, which is a tracker. I got ADSB in, so I can see other aircraft that are transmitting their signal where they're at.
Okay.
And it's incredible. I can put it in where I want to go to and navigate to, activate to, boom, boom, boom. Tells me my ETA, how long it's going to take me to get
Oh,
there.
no way. So it's just like Google Maps.
Oh, it's incredible. It's
but-
better. No, it's high tech. Oh, this thing is incredible.
So
yeah.
there, you have much more peace of mind
Oh, yeah.
now than in the 80s when you're just like, no lights.
Oh, yeah. Back in the day, there was
Compass.
nothing. Yeah, it was a compass.
Hope for the best,
And
yeah.
you flew by the seat of your pants. There was no navigation.
Huh.
Well, they had some navigation, but I didn't have it in the plane. So, yeah.
Very cool. Oh, my list is getting shorter here. Flying events. I asked you about the Edge.
Like I say, I could go on for hours. Yeah.
No, I love it. All right, we're cutting back to Nick. Back to you, Nick.
Okay, so here I am back in the hot seat. And Alan, do you have any? Are you still flying right now?
Oh, yes.
When the
yes.
weather permits, right?
Weather permits. Yeah, I got the skis on the Aranca. It's ready to go.
Ready to go ice fishing?
Yep.
Alan, thanks for coming by, and we'll see everybody on the next episode of The Open Gate.
Thanks for having me. Perfect. Perfect. You spanked it.